When I arrived at the island, I had two suitcases, no SIM card, no connection to internet, and absolutely no idea what I was doing. Looking back, this sounds incredibly stupid, but at the time though, it felt normal. Because when you are 18, you've already spent a huge amount of money, you've said goodbye to your family, and you're standing in another country by yourself that isn't much left to think about. You just keep moving. I remember walking through Dublin Airport, dragging two huge suitcases behind me. My phone was probably dying. I didn't have any mobile data, and I needed to get from Dublin to Cork, then from Cork to my accommodation. And my accommodation wasn't even in the city, it was several kilometers away. I remember staying there thinking, okay, I guess I have to figure this out. And that's basically how my entire first year abroad went. I just was just figuring things out. Before I talk about Ireland, I think it's important to explain why I left Brazil in the first place. The neat thing is that I didn't laugh because my life was terrible. Actually, my life was pretty good. I had a lot of friends, I had family, people who cared about me. I had options. I even had a girlfriend at the time. I wasn't running from some disaster. In fact, I could already see what my future would probably look like if I've stayed. I would probably go to university, get a degree, get a good job, stay close to my family, maybe got married, build a normal life. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem was that I could already see it, and I was comfortable, but I was also stuck. I was happy, but I was also bored. And those two feelings can definitely exist at the same time. I remember being around 17 and thinking about leaving constantly. Not because I had some master plan, I generally didn't. If you asked me back then exactly why I wanted to leave, I probably wouldn't have given you a great answer. I just felt this need to do something bigger, like something uncertain, something that forced me to grow. Around the same period, my life was full of normal teenage drama. I changed school because of a girl that turned into a weird situationship. Then later, I got in a relationship with her sister, which, looking back, was about as complicated as it sounds. My life wasn't falling apart. It was just normal school, relations, friends, family. The thing is, normal wasn't enough anymore. At some point, I realized something. The version of myself that existed at 17 would never understand a lot of the decisions I was about to make. And maybe that was exactly the point. Eventually, I started looking into exchange programs. At first, it was just pure curiosity. Then it became a possibility. Then one day, I was sitting, signing the contracts. And that's when it hit me. This isn't an idea anymore. This is happening. My mother was probably the biggest reason I managed to leave. She supported me towards the beginning, from the beginning. She helped me make things, happen. My father, though, was more complicated, I would say. He never sat me down and said, don't go, but he also wasn't pushing me towards it. Looking back, I think he had his own reasons. Maybe he understood how difficult the decision was. Like maybe he saw part of his own life in it. I don't know. Maybe he wondered like what would have happened if I've made different choices when I was younger. I don't know. I generally don't know. But what I do know is that when the time came, he helped, and he helped a lot. It was a loan that ended up helping complete the funds I needed, and without that, things would have been much harder. Not that much harder, but definitely harder. So even though we didn't always see things the same way, he still played a huge role in making it happen. Then came the airport, and honestly, I don't remember being emotional, at least not in the way people usually expect. I think I was so focused on what I had to do that I almost disconnected from the reality of what I was actually doing. My family was there, my parents, my grandfather, people who had helped to raise me. Then it was time to go through security. We hugged, I walked forward, I turned around for maybe half a second, waved, and kept walking. That's it. No dramatic move scene, no speech. Just a wave, like. Part of me thinks I knew that if I stood there for too long, I would make it harder on myself. So I just didn't. I kept moving. The funny thing is that leaving Brazil wasn't the hardest part. Like, the hardest part came much later, because everybody talks about moving abroad, but nobody actually talks about what happens after you arrive. The loneliness, the boredom, the feeling that you've made a massive mistake. For the first few months, I was struggling. I couldn't find a job. I was handing out CVs everywhere, literally everywhere, and nobody was calling. I eventually got a trial at the pizzeria. Didn't get hired though, which wasn't that much surprising. I had basically no work experience. Then I started doing deliveries, and honestly, I did it for a few weeks and realized it wasn't for me. Could I have kept doing it? Probably, but I knew I needed something else. The frustrating thing was that I was trying. I was actually trying. People sometimes think success comes from motivation, but during those months, I wasn't motivated. I was scared, I was lonely, and I was exhausted. I was just refusing to quit for most of the time, and that's different. Eventually I got lucky, or maybe prepared enough to take advantage from the lucky I got. During my first week in Ireland, I remember meeting my first housemates in the new accommodation, and I found out about this bartending course. I've waited for like 2 months and finally got a trial. Then I got hired, surprisingly. I thought everything would get easier, but it just didn't. Because then I started getting sick, like constantly sick. Before working in hospitality, I almost never thought about how many people you're exposed to every day. People talking close to you, people coughing, people drinking, shouting. Combined with overnight shifts and stress, my body got destroyed. I was sick over and over again. The worst part was finally getting the opportunity I had worked so hard for, and then feeling like my own body was holding me back. Like, what? I remember one period where I genuinely thought about leaving. Not because I hated Ireland, not because I missed Brazil. I was just tired. Like, really, really tired. I was living alone. I wasn't eating properly. I barely knew how to cook. I was calling my parents all the time. And I remember sitting there counting the days, like counting months, thinking about going home, thinking about quitting. Maybe this whole thing had been a mistake. If I could go back and talk to any version of myself, it wouldn't be the guy at the airport. It would be the guy sitting alone during those really hard days. The guy who thought he was failing. The guy who couldn't see any progress. The guy who was surviving one day at a time. But put a hand on his shoulder and tell him, just keep going, mate. Not because everything magically gets better. Not because life suddenly became easy or some shit. Just because you're doing better than you think, Eventually something changed. Not all at once. But I finally started making some money. I built some friends and some friendships. And I started figuring out how life actually works. And one day, a very close friend of mine, let's say my best friend, it's my twin, uh, he said something that completely changed my perspective. At the time, I thought I was doing terribly. In my head, I was behind everyone, that I wasn't, successful enough, I wasn't earning enough, doing enough. And I remember very clearly, he basically looked at me and my situation and said, bro, you are 18, you're doing good. You're living alone, you're living abroad, you speak almost 3-4 languages I don't even know. You're saving money, you're paying your own way. And for the first time, I actually stopped and looked at what I had accomplished. Because until then, all I could see were the problems, I couldn't see the progress. That realization changed something. Before Ireland, I spent a lot of time looking for validation from other people, looking for proof, for approval. looking for someone to tell me I was doing okay. I blamed a huge part of this on the fact that I was abandoned from my parents when I was 1 year old, especially from my mother, because she had the opportunity to raise me, she just didn't want it. She handed me to my grandmother, which is the person who raised me, and I believe she truly loves me. I truly love her. I kind of tried to understand my mom, but this is another video, you know. My dad was a loan shark, basically. It's a loan shark, I would say. But whatever. The thing is, eventually I just realized that nobody was coming to save me. You know, I had to solve my own problems. I had to make my own decisions and live with that. I have to keep going. And the more times you do that, the more confidence you build. So was moving to Ireland worth it? Like, I would say definitely. Honestly, not because it's a perfect country, not because life became easy. I just suddenly became like worth myself, you know? I just saw how much I was worth. And I became independent. I became confident, capable. And for the first time in my life, I started really believing that if I got into a hard situation, I would probably figure it out. That is the biggest thing Ireland could have ever given to me. You know? Not money, not a job, not even the experience itself. You know, not even the experience, the confidence. And like once you develop that, it's very difficult to go back to being the person you were before. You know? That's about it, guys. I really hope y'all have enjoyed the video. Hit the subscribe, hit the like. Have a good day, and I see y'all in the next video.